Hi everyone, I'm Katie Wesney. I'm stepping in tonight for Karen, who's under the weather, so you've got me instead. And I thought it'd be useful to start with acknowledging the backdrop that we're operating in. We're in an election year, there's global instability, rising living costs, and a lot of noise. You'll see headlines around OCR inflation, increasingly conversations about the sustainability of New Zealand's super. We can't control any of that, but uncertainty isn't a reason to pause, it's a reason to plan. The people who do best financially aren't the ones who predict outcomes. That's really hard. No one has a crystal ball, but it's the people who build plans that work despite them. So tonight we're talking about wealth creation, but not the version that sounds like you need a windfall, a hot tip, or a perfect moment to get started. It's the real version, the one built in the background of a normal, busy life through decisions and habits that compound quietly over time. That's what we're unpacking tonight, what actually moves the needle and how to start doing it consistently. Let's get into it. So you might be thinking, who am I to tell you what to do with your money? So, as I said, my name is Katie Wesney. I'm the National Coaching Lead at Enable Me. Been here for 11 years. I'm also a chartered accountant, over 20 years in the accounting, investing, banking, and consulting world. I've built and sold my own business, and I've worked across Europe, US, and New Zealand. And I also am a columnist and media commentator. Honestly, I've spent my whole career helping people make better financial decisions, not just technically, but behaviorally. It's really about intelligence or income. It's honestly about structure and consistency. Tonight is about giving you that structure so that you can make confident decisions in an uncertain environment. So, quick disclaimer. This session is general education, not personalized financial advice. I'd love to give you personalized financial advice, but to do so, I need to know lots about you, who you are, your hopes and dreams. And there will be a wee offer at the end of this webinar in terms of giving you that personalized financial advice. So think of this session as helping you understand what good looks like so you can make better decisions from here. And we'll start with this. Wealth isn't about excess or greed. It is about options, flexibility, and reducing stress. It gives you choice later in life, and increasingly, funding retirement is becoming more of an individual responsibility rather than something we can fully rely on externally. And I'm happy to call that out, and that is really important to acknowledge. And these stats are so telling. Many Kiwis aren't confident about retirement. They worry about money regularly and expect to work longer. Add to that increasing discussion around New Zealand's super sustainability. It may not disappear, but relying on it alone is risky. This is why building your own plan, it really matters. And I think one of the biggest barriers I see, and I've been doing this for a very long time now, is people thinking wealth creation isn't for them. It's too complicated. I'm too late. I don't have enough income. But in reality, wealth is far more about behavior and structure than starting point, especially in uncertain environment. Honestly, those who act early and consistently are the ones who win out. And uncertainty, it isn't unusual. It's actually the norm. What's different right now is just the volume of it. Politics, war, inflation, cost of living, but reacting to headlines is where people go wrong. A financial plan gives you something steady to come back to. It stops you making emotional, short-term decision when things get or feel really uncomfortable. It's like a compass. And This is where most people underestimate the work. Everyone wants to jump to investing, but wealth is built from the ground up, especially in a high cost environment like now. Cash flow discipline matters more than ever. You cannot out invest poor structure. This is the unsexy part, but this is where momentum starts. And that foundational level around your money habits, that really clear goal setting. And we're going to unpack all of this tonight together. That cash flow management is critical today. That debt management, how you structure your mortgage, getting rid of that as fast as possible, ensuring you protect yourself from an insurance perspective, and getting those KiwiSaver settings right. That is the foundation of the house that you're building. And then we lean into that wealth creation and retirement. And we can do that concurrently, but from a really strong foundation. And I think this is where it gets a bit personal because money decisions are not logical. Your personality plays a huge role in what works and what doesn't. And in uncertain times, people tend to either freeze or take on too much risk. The goal is balance, a plan that fits you, not someone else. And again, that money personality, we're all different. Understand who you are, what will work for you. And so, in terms of those money personalities, some people are shoppers. I can lean into shopping myself. So, we derive emotional satisfaction from shopping. A saver, like my husband, derives emotional satisfaction from saving. A plotter doesn't particularly enjoy shopping nor saving. So, they're somewhere in the middle. And I think often where it gets interesting is if you have a partner and your finances are combined. Um, it can get a bit spicy if you're a shopper and a saver. Kind of cute at the beginning, less cute as time goes on. Bit of a niggle. Finances are one of the biggest causes of relationship breakdowns, just calling it out there. Um, Shopper and a shopper, they tend to look great, but generally aren't making the progress that they deserve. And a plot is generally just wafting through life, fine, but not doing what they should. Saver with a saver, you'd think, oh, shoo-in for progress. Actually, in my experience, you're good at accumulating cash, not so in executing it around a strategy to grow. So again, acknowledging who you are and what works for you is really important. And often it goes hand in hand with risk. So again, often those savers are quite risk averse. So again, good at having cash, but not great at investing. So again, it's having that great strategy where they feel confident to act. And sometimes shoppers are really willing to take on risk, and sometimes we have to pull them back in terms of what is sustainable and balanced going forward. And very unlikely that you're a dreamer if you've sat of an evening watching a money webinar with us. So dreamers think the universe will provide. We all know it won't. So we jog on. And before you do anything, you need clarity. Where is your money going? What's the debt doing? What are you actually working towards? What are your goals? Because the biggest risk isn't making the wrong move, it's operating without a clear starting point. And that's the first thing we do when someone comes to see us. We kind of get them to jump on the financial scales so we can understand from a bird's eye view what their opening position is. Because sometimes it's quite tricky to see the woods for the trees, but you really need to step back and understand, well, what am I playing with? Where am I starting from? And I think this is one of the biggest traps right now. When things feel uncertain, people hold cash. It feels really safe, but with inflation, doing nothing is actually losing ground, especially with rising cost. We're seeing this in real time. So again, plan over reaction. And we've given you a wee example there. To outpace inflation of 3% year on year and retain its same value, 100,000 nest egg today would need to grow after 5 years to 115,000, after 10 years to 134,000, after 20 years to 180,000. So again, inflation is a silent thief of wealth. wealth. Often we think having money or cash in bank is safe. I challenge that. I actually think often people bank a loss because it's not even keeping up with inflation, the measly return that they get in terms of interest. And then they pay tax for the privilege of earning a little amount of interest. So again, reframing safe. And a wealth plan is simply, in my mind, structure. It answers what are you trying to achieve, how you'll get there, and what decisions to make along the way. In a world where external factors are unpredictable, your plan becomes your anchor. And for most Kiwis, your home is your biggest financial lever. Yes, clearing debt matters, but use it strategically. That's often how real momentum is built. And we are really refined in terms of building that foundational piece in terms of your plan. So some of our clients come to us with mortgages, some don't. But if you do have a mortgage, best be having a good plan to pay it off. Make sure that you structure it really well. Embed savings or debt reduction goals within that structure. Because again, can't control those external settings, can't control what interest rates will be in the future, can't predict what inflation will be, but you can control your own structure and actions. And again, really vital in terms of having that solid foundation to grow wealth thereafter. And I'm going to show you graphically what that looks like because I think it's really interesting. If a mortgage runs until 65, your options really do narrow, and you can see that within that graph. And look, if New Zealand super shifts or doesn't keep up with the living costs, that pressure increases. This is why timing matters in terms of you doing something and being strategic and having a plan. And in this example, and this is average. So on average, people buy their first homes at about 35 in New Zealand, and it takes them 30 years to pay off that mortgage. Great, but you can't eat your house. So they've got a bit of KiwiSaver generally, and it lasts them to age 69. That's a quite a short, happy life in terms of retirement. And again, that gap between 69 and 90 that we have to fund your happy life, that is the starting point that we need to close out in terms of this particular example. And this is where you start to see real transformation. And again, Enable Me has been around for a very long time. We started just after the GFC. I've been here for 11 years. Honestly, I really feel at this point in time there's nothing I haven't seen. But please, please have a really optimal strategy to clear that mortgage early. It's not the only thing you do, certainly, but it gives you lots more capacity thereafter. And again, in this example, instead of paying off the mortgage at 65, this person is paying off at 55. And again, we try and halve the normal term that a mortgage is predicted when when a client first comes in to see us in terms of that base strategy. So for this client, instead of getting mortgage free at 65, we've got them mortgage free at 55. That gives them 10 years to save, which means again, their wealth position at 65 is higher, which means that their wealth can last not till 69, but to 80. And you can still see in this example that there is a wee gap. And that gap, there's still a wee gap. That is the gap we're focusing on in terms of plan. So that might be executing on an investment property, etc. Lots of options, but the earlier you start, the more options you give yourself. And again, you can see how pivotal that debt reduction strategy associated with a home in terms of opening up what comes thereafter. And goals need to be real, specific, and motivating. And especially now that they need to be discussed as a household because uncertainty outside means alignment inside becomes even more important. And I see a myriad of goals when clients come to see me. But in essence, in almost every situation, My clients' goals are anchored to two things. They're anchored to security. My clients, in essence, don't want to worry about money anymore. And secondly, they want a little bit more financial freedom. So they want to have more choice around the work they do, how long they work for. That's really important for my clients. But again, we're really granular around goals. I saw a lovely couple today. Their goals were they wanted to upgrade their home. They wanted to get mortgage free on that property. They just want to live a comfortable life now and into the future. They want to provide private education for their son over the intermediate years. They want to have the ability to travel and retire with choice. Knowing that is really powerful. That's the motivator. And that needs to align with strategy in terms of what comes next. And you've got to do it in order in terms of you don't want to go too soon, which means they can't upgrade their home, etc. So, in terms of plan and goals, we're listening really careful in terms of what drives you, what's important to you and your family, because that will dictate the strategy that we lean into in terms of your personal situation. And these are the things you need to be thinking about and put them down on paper. Really powerful. And there are many ways to invest. The key isn't finding the best one, it's choosing the right combination for you. And importantly, starting. Often people wait for perfect. They want to know what the absolute best thing to do. And actually, it's always a combination of lots of different things. And I think that's really unique with our clients. We don't play favorites. I actually could care less whether you invest in property funds. It's just what aligns best in terms of your strategy and where more do we lean in terms of age and stage around options available and what we need to achieve in terms of that financial plan. And again, lots of options. What is the right option for you? For most of my clients, they lean into property and funds. Property because it gives them the ability to leverage, and a little bit of funds because that gives them that diversification and liquidity in time, especially when they're getting closer to retirement. But there's no one size fits all. We're not just doing one thing. We're understanding, well, what is the right combination for you in terms of your wealth plan and your goals? And this is where reality comes in. If there is a gap in terms of what you need to achieve around retirement, so again, we're assessing where you're starting from and we're understanding what you need to achieve longer term. And what that comes down to is assessing, well, what does a good life look like to you and your family? What does it cost you? Because in effect, we need to be growing that asset position to a point that feeds that when you're no longer working. Everyone has a different number. We understand yours and we execute on a strategy around that. So again, understanding that gap and what we need to achieve dictates strategy. Again, if there's a gap, higher returns may be required, particularly if there is a shorter runway. Again, the earlier we start, the more options we have, but higher returns often come with volatility. So again, we don't guess, we plan. And KiwiSaver is great. It is great. I think it has been so important in terms of moving the dial for New Zealanders, but it's not a full solution. And with questions around future government support in terms of super, I think relying solely on it is risky. It is a really amazing foundation for lots of people, but it's not the whole house. And you've got to make sure it's working as hard as possible for you. Ensure that if you're employed, that you are matching what your employer is giving you. I really hope that you chose to go up to that 3.5% on the 1st of April. And I really hope that you'll be going up to 4% if cash flow allows. next April. Because again, that's just going to give you more compounding returns and get free money if you're employed and your employer will match. That's really important, but you've got to make sure that you're in the right fund for you. There's some general rules around this, not individualized financial advice, obviously, but general rules. And if you are 10 years or more away from retirement, likely it should be in a higher growth fund to maximize your returns. And remember, so important to have your own plan. I think one of the great questions that was submitted prior, I'll answer it now, was, well, what do we do with our KiwiSaver at 65? And I think there's a fallacy that you turn 65 and you cash in your KiwiSaver. Not necessarily true. It depends what you need it for in terms of your plan. If you don't necessarily need your KiwiSaver to fund your lifestyle, well, that should dictate what fund you should be in and essentially how long you can keep it in KiwiSaver. There's no reason to say that at 65 you have to cash it all in and bank a loss thereafter. Actually, for lots of people, you shouldn't. So again, understanding your plan, your number, and your strategy, really important when you look at all of these settings. And as we go through all of these, just remember, like each option has trade-offs. The right choice depends on your plan, your timing, and your tolerance, not headlines and not trends. So term deposits, they provide safety but limited growth. They have a role, but not typically for long-term wealth building. So again, everything has benefits, everything has drawbacks. It is what's right in the context of your plan and your goals. Lots of my clients will have managed funds that offer diversification and professional management, but fees and volatility really do need consideration. And again, you've got to understand, well, what is the right fund type for you? So for most of us, if we have KiwiSaver, we already have managed funds, but with rules around it in terms of access. So very similarly, those fund types will dictate the likely volatility within that fund, which is again translates to the compensation you might get in terms of return. So smaller volatility within those conservative, almost cash-like funds, bonds, etc. Typical return 2.67%. That's really small on my screen. Balanced a little bit more of a return, growth at about 7% and aggressive 8.48%. So again, depending on your goals, when you need to access it, likely dictates the level of volatility or risk that you can have in terms of that investment strategy. I've also said lots of my clients will have property as part of their overarching wealth creation plan. Lots of people initially, when they come to see me, don't necessarily have wads of cash in the bank. Some do, some don't. But for a lot of people, they have equity in their home. And with property, I think that leverage piece is really important to acknowledge. And that is one of the biggest drivers for growth in terms of any wealth creation plan. And again, there are drawbacks in terms of it is a long-term plan and you've got to buy the right one. I think people have been really cavalier historically in terms of just buying any old property and hoping that the tide will lift them. That is not the case. May not have ever been the case, but it is certainly not the case now. You've got to be really purposeful. You buy the right house and have the ability to keep it. And again, you make money in property through capital gain, but that yield has to be so that you have the ability to keep it. And we've got a wee bubble there that's saying, well, if your retirement gap is greater than 300,000, you'll likely need to leverage to bridge it. Because again, with that leverage piece, and we've got a wee example, I might flip to that now. That's where really things can accelerate, but it's also where discipline, it really does matter. Leverage is powerful, but it needs to be part of a structured plan, not a reactive decision. And you're seeing the example there. So 160,000 to invest. You could pop that in a managed fund. 160,000 gives you a return of 9,600 after tax and fees, etc. Versus a property, you put in 160,000, the bank puts in the rest, and then you get gains on 800,000 versus the 160,000. So you get a return of 48,000. That is the beauty around property. It's that you have a bigger asset that appreciates in time. Does it appreciate in a linear manner? Of course it doesn't. Everything moves in cycles, but again, the easiest way to de-risk property, not to say that you can de-risk it entirely, is to buy the right one and to have a really good hold strategy as part of your overarching wealth creation strategy. Again, comes down to planning and being really precise in terms of your numbers. And these are the patterns I see all of this time, especially when people feel uncertain. It's the waiting for that perfect time, waiting for the election, waiting for petrol prices to come down, waiting for interest rates to be more certain, waiting for the next round of redundancies to be announced, waiting. The perfect time never, ever exists. Actually, the perfect time to start was yesterday. In all reality, and the future is always going to be uncertain. There's nothing surer than that. All you can do is work with the knowns. And every single one of my clients who have experienced uncertainty have been so glad they started. And again, doing this for 11 years, I've seen everything. I've seen cancer diagnoses. And gosh, we've been so glad that we did what we needed to at the time in terms of giving people more options. Um, work through COVID with my clients. Um, always have worked with lots of pilots, aircrew, etc. It was a rocky road, I tell you. But again, they had a plan, they knew their numbers, they had executed when they could, they had good buffers. They weren't looking back thinking woulda, shoulda, coulda. They had done what they needed to do. They had the right insurance in place. So again, they can't control those external factors, but I was darn proud of them and myself for helping them through that period in terms of controlling the controllable and doing what needs to be done when they had options. And I bet you have options. Are you executing on them? And I think lots of patterns around reacting emotionally. And I know it's hard. The headlines are designed to be like super scary. I mean, there's just one thing after another. I get that. I can't even watch the news anymore. But again, what I know to be true is when you have an anchor, when you have a plan, actually, when you're working with somebody else, that is really helpful in being confident and calm. And again, understanding, well, do I need to reset anything within my plan? Because your plan's never set in concrete. If it was, it becomes irrelevant to you. But it gives you a really good anchor and a steer in terms of what that next best thing should be for you. And I think also following others, like bin influencers said do this or that, or Bob at the barbecue. I mean, how well is Bob doing, really? Let's be honest. Again, it's taking unqualified advice and snippets unhelpfully and trying to translate it to you because you're the only one that knows you and your family, your goals, your opportunities, your threats. So again, you have to have a plan that's bespoke to you. Everyone's plans should be different. You've got to lean into your opportunities and make sure you don't expose your flank. Really important in terms of buffer. And again, there is no perfect strategy. There really isn't. If someone tells you there is, I disagree, respectfully. But there is the right one for you. And in uncertain environments, honestly, consistency beats cleverness every time. Someone can be clever on one day, but the person that's consistent every day will do better. Of course they will. So again, the best approach for you takes into account your time frame. So how long do you have? Because again, that dictates what options you have available to you. And for some things, you do not have an infinite time to execute on. In terms of investing in property, the bank's not going to lend you funds forever. The older you get, the harder it is. Acknowledge it. Your goals, your risk appetite, your cash flow requirements, your flexibility, ability to access mortgage lending, and that wealth goal. And with any investment plan, time in the market is far better than timing the market. Really, really critical. So, key takeaways. If you take one thing from today, start with a plan because the world may stay uncertain, but your direction doesn't have to be. Start with a clear goal, understand your requirements, consider time frame and risk, and get advice where needed. We are so shy in the money arena for asking for help. It grinds my gears. There's lots of good qualified help out there. If you are unsure, ask for help. And I think if today has highlighted anything, it's that doing nothing is still a decision. And right now, with cost of living pressure, potential policy changes, uncertainty globally, I think clarity matters more than ever. This is about making confident, intentional decisions. So, as I mentioned in terms of that disclosure, a consultation with a coach like myself, and we're up and down the country, video consults, face to face, provides clarity on where you are and what needs to change to reach your goals. And as I promised, we have a wee offer. And you know that wealth isn't built in a single night, but clarity can be. And clarity is exactly where momentum starts. If tonight has sparked something for you, if you're sitting there thinking, I need to actually look at my situation properly, we've made it easy to take the next step. So for anyone who books tonight, you can look in a one-on-one diagnostic session with a qualified financial advisor and coach like myself for just $99. That's up to 90 minutes, normally valued at 400, to look at your specific situation and identify the real levers for you. Not generic advice, your plan, your numbers, your next move. The QR code is on the screen tonight only at that price. And if today has highlighted anything, it's that action matters, clarity beats waiting. And if you reach out to us after that date, it will be 149. So 99, one night only. So we've got a whole heap of questions. I think I answered one along the way, and my wonderful producer Amelia has been in the background. So Amelia, hit me with questions.
Thanks, Katie. We have had some great questions submitted. I'll skip that
Fantastic.
one with the Q saver at the 65 one. I'll skip that one.
Great.
So, our first question: any advice on managing your money in an inflated economy?
Hmm. Yeah, good question. We have had such an inflated economy for the last few years, hey. Have a plan for how you want to spend your money and stick to it. And make sure your wealth is growing faster than inflation. Because honestly, I'm going to say it again, money sitting in a savings account earning 3% when inflation is 4% isn't safe. It's a loss on paper. So be very clear.
Thank you. Next question: any tips on how to build wealth after a long, messy, and costly divorce?
Gosh, I've worked with so many amazing clients through this transition. My advice, take a breath. You're in control now, and that's actually a powerful place to be. I think, again, take stock of where you are, where you want to get to, and just focus on the next right step, which might simply be reaching out to someone who can help. But again, I think there's a powerful piece in terms of having the ability to steer the ship. Really important.
A lot of strategies are focused on couples and utilizing that second income to pay down your
Mm.
mortgage faster so you can invest earlier. Any advice for the best way for a single income earner to build wealth?
Same. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, I accidentally muted myself. Um, same same principles apply. Honestly, it's about understanding where you're at, having a plan. Your costs actually will be lighter, and I think also having one person in charge can actually be really powerful in terms of making really good decisions thereafter. So again, same principles apply. Have a plan, know your strategy, and execute on it, and be clinical.
Fourth question, I have a Kiwi saver. In addition to that, I am looking at products to invest in, but am unsure of the type to invest in. For example, deciding whether I should go for a growth fund, NZX top 50, or an overseas fund. What is the best way to diversify, or should I just get straight into a growth fund because it's easy?
Yeah, and again, it just comes down to your goals and timeline. If you won't need to access the money for 10 years or more, growth assets across funds or property can serve you and tend to do the heavy lifting. So, again, understand your goals and timeline. That will dictate the strategy in terms of where you should invest.
We have some live questions that have come through.
Oh, awesome. Hit me.
What about an emergency fund? We're
Yep.
taught to have it accessible, aka low interest. So I guess this person is asking if you can speak more towards how an emergency fund might fit into a financial plan.
Yeah, it's actually a non-negotiable. That's part of that foundational piece in terms of resilience. You know how we said let's build that foundation first. So it's a non-negotiable for my clients that they have an emergency buffer. And generally speaking, that equates to about 6 months of cost load. In terms of preference of where that sits, if they have a mortgage, my preference is that it sits offsetting the mortgage on the proviso that they can reaccess it. Why is that? You always pay more in interest on debt than you receive in savings. If they don't have a mortgage, then I would say accessible in higher interest savings.
Another question that we had that just came through was, what's the difference between a financial coach and a financial advisor, and how do you choose?
Hmm. So, a financial advisor historically would give you advice in terms of the scope of the products that they may be aligned with. So often, and not always, but quite often, so you might see a financial advisor at the bank, for example, and they will give you advice on the products the banks have, or often a financial advisor as part of, one of the bigger investment firms, and then they will give you advice on the suite of products that they have. A financial advisor who is qualified has their level 5 qualifications, like myself. Um, we are often our point of difference, and some people do this, but we really lean into when we give advice, we're all qualified financial advisors, so we all have our qualifications. We're all part of a dispute tribunal, so that's that qualified financial advisor. And again, at Enable Me, we are looking at someone's whole position, not necessarily just advising on one particular product. So I look at cash flow, I look at mortgage structure, I look at wealth creation strategies, we're looking at KiwiSaver, etc. So we're looking at the whole gambit of what people do. And as a coach, people work with us because we provide them accountability often as well. So we will say, well, here's a strategy, but we're going to walk alongside you to help you execute it. So all of the people I work with who you would see in a consultation are qualified financial advisors, but they're also coaches. They understand behavioral economics, they understand strategy, and they're darn good at keeping you accountable to take action because that's the critical piece. You could have the most beautiful plan, but if you don't execute on said plan, it's not worth the paper it's written on.
We've got one more question. Is debt recycling with investments a strategy that is used?
Yeah, often clients will use that in terms of, they pay down one asset, they create equity or that value goes up and they use that gain as a deposit on the next property, etc. Often clients will do that.
All right, let's just make that our last question and let you to close off.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Sorry it wasn't Karen, but I hope I have inspired you. I hope you have got some good takeaways. And just remember, the best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is tonight. So I hope to see you soon.